All right, we are, oh no, we have a special guest after this, but I was going to say we're between us and the alcohol, so we'll keep it interesting. Uh, all right, so I've got another two OGs in the space, and I'll let them introduce themselves and the project first, and then we'll get into the nooks and crannies of DeFi a little bit more. So whichever one wants to go first.
Hi, my name is James Putra from TradeStation Crypto. It's kind of funny to be called an OG. It happens very quick.
Hey, I'm Tomer from the Stellar Development Foundation. I work on tech strategy.
All right, we got Stellar supporters in here. Oh, wow.
Looks like you're at the right address.
This is good. So why don't we then start with you? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Stellar, and then we can loop that into a kind of a next question, which is more into DeFi and kind of some of the tools that you're seeing built in this space.
Sure. So Stellar is an L1 blockchain. It's been around since 2014, which in this space is like a dinosaur. We're really focused on financial inclusion and equitable access. Started as a blockchain for payments and simple asset issuances. We've seen it grow to various DeFi offerings. We have a DEX. We launched AMMs last quarter, which is working really well. And we're constantly working on increasing our offerings of DeFi with an emphasis on financial inclusion.
Okay, James?
Sure. So TradeStation Crypto, we're an online broker-dealer. Our main focus is all asset classes on one screen. So we have crypto, we have equities, options, futures, futures options, and our whole focus is to try to make things easy for people to interact with the market.
When we look at DeFi, how many people here are actually participating in DeFi? Wow. Okay, this is pretty cool. So we'll, and I see a lot of hands down, so I'm assuming folks are learning or shy, right? That's good. Okay.
Well, do you have an interest account somewhere?
I'm sorry?
If you have an interest account at any one of the interest providers, you're probably already in DeFi.
There we go. So let's talk about that. Some of the most, let's maybe start backwards of some of the most useful tools that you've seen in DeFi until now. Could you name some? Could we talk about some?
So from our perspective as a kind of retail platform, the most interesting things are the financial products that are built on top of DeFi. As this industry expands very quickly, we need to be able to sort out things like options, collateralized lending. Those type of things are what's really compelling for us. And if you look across the space, the interest has been such an interesting uptake from the various, like TradeStation, BlockFi, Celsius. They all offer interest accounts because you can't get interest on your assets today. So that is something that's been super interesting. But when you dig underneath the surface, what's actually happening underneath the hood is a lot of DeFi interaction. So there's going to be some types of over-collateralized lending and borrowing in there. And that market really opens up a lot of avenues for firms like TradeStation to be able to help develop and build products inside of that space. So lend and borrow is probably my most interesting. But the derivative side, I think, is phenomenal. There's a huge upside on derivatives on top of DeFi.
Thank you. Tomer?
Sure. Well, there's the obvious suspects, things like liquidity pools that have really kind of like revolutionized the way that we do asset conversion and allow this retail access for market makers. So usually in the old times, you'd need to be a market maker with complex operations. Today, anyone can offer liquidity and gather yield. So that's very exciting, and it's the basis of a lot of the other things that we're seeing today. I'm really excited about the institutional offerings that we're seeing in the DeFi space. So Fireblocks were here yesterday. They were talking about this idea of permission pools. So taking DeFi and bringing it back to the institutional players with everything that we learned in retail, but now with the type of kind of like compliance and risk assessment that you need to be a big player in that space. We're seeing a lot of institutional interest, not only liquidity play, but also things like regulated assets, STOs, security issuances, basically issuing anything on a blockchain, doing it in a regulated way with players like securitize and securrency, but reaping the benefits of doing it on a public blockchain.
So this is one of the topics I'm personally interested about, and I think this is where that crossroads is of institutions and the retail and the crypto kind of nudging the institutions, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, because a lot of folks that I deal with would say, well, no, there's still a lot of time that needs to pass, or tools that need to be built before institutions will actually start to offer something similar to what's in some of the things that you've mentioned in crypto. But what I think we are seeing when we are investing, and what we're seeing now is next year or two, we're going to start to see a lot of DeFi tools go into a mass market, which are going to nudge, to your point, a lot of these institutional players. Can you give me an example of where some of those tools could be, or what some of the companies that are doing that are the best at disruption of the institutions and kind of start to offer tools that are going to go mass market in DeFi?
So the permission side is probably the biggest thing for us right now. For institutions like TradeStation, we need to be able to rely on some form of KYC, and it makes it very difficult for us to interact with pools that are anonymous. So to be able to bring our customer base and capital in, having some form of a permission pool would be extremely helpful for us. The other things that are really interesting from our perspective as a trading firm is to watch how there's always this balance between decentralization and speed and scalability with DeFi. Being able to look at some of the order books that are being built on top of DeFi are extremely compelling. From us, we don't really try to nail down one pool or one protocol. We try to connect to as many as possible. And so seeing these things that give us that infrastructure that lets us interact with it are very helpful. Some of the things that are gaps right now in the DeFi, we need some traditional finance people in there. And I know that's kind of a bad word, but when you talk to our firm or our risk department, we need to have people that are familiar and are going to talk the same language. If you blow us out of the door with some smart contract stuff, you're going to lose us. But if you talk to us about what does it mean to manage risk, what is your AML policies, your procedures, your operating procedures, that kind of stuff we understand, and it makes it easy for us to be able to engage with your team.
Yeah, I'm definitely with James on that. I think that this kind of like amalgamation of traditional finance in DeFi, there's a lot of work to do there. We just heard yesterday about a mortgage company here that takes crypto, and I think that that's just the first step. We're going to see more of that. Another huge thing that needs to happen is access, just the on and off ramps, because basically right now, people in this room have access to crypto systems. It's very easy to get in and out. We talk a lot about equitable access, about financial inclusion, and that can't happen without access for all. And unfortunately, there are places in the world where you just can't access crypto. Either it's not available or it's just too expensive. So we've been putting a lot of effort into building an interoperable network of on and off ramps. We call these the Anchor Network in Stellar, shameless plug. And the latest player to enter this is MoneyGram that recently announced their integration. We already have a pilot in play right now. This is supposed to launch globally in Q2. And that will mean that any person holding a stable coin in their Stellar wallet would be able to go to any cash agent around the world, a MoneyGram cash agent, 300,000 locations, and be able to turn that crypto into actual cash and vice versa. And that stablecoin can then be used to participate in DeFi. So this is a really important thing that we're working on. There are other players working on that. TBD from Square, Block, sorry, are working on that, and I'm really excited to see what they come up with.
The other interesting thing, don't underestimate the power of the wallet. So Robinhood is about to put their wallet out there. That's massive because they are killers on user experience. And allowing that wallet, while mostly seems to be angled towards NFTs, really puts them in a position to expose their customers to DeFi-related protocols. And that's what's going to help bring in more capital when you have these mass aggregation platforms that can interact with these different protocols.
I think this is something really important that I keep seeing through either institutional investors who want to invest with us or in the projects that are coming in. And some of you who were in the room earlier for when I was on the panel, I talked about that one of our portfolios sold into Betterment. And that's where we're seeing this. And I think, as we said earlier, Mark Cuban talked about utility, right, and the use. A lot of these big companies, like you talked about, right, Robinhood and everybody, MoneyGram, they all have users already, right? They have certain products that work for a certain amount of time, and they have users. Now they need to catch up to innovation. So the easiest thing for them to is probably buy a product, right, and integrate it versus build it themselves, or partner, right, with somebody like you to do it. So if you're a regulator in the space, how do you approach the space? How would you approach it if you were a regulator? And I get your point. You need old finance guys to come in, or girls, to come in and kind of help that. But at the same time, we want a different world. So how do you actually create that? Right? Because a lot of us that came into crypto from the beginning were kind of a little bit anti the status quo. Right? And we wanted the financial inclusion. And a lot of projects I invest in are about financial inclusion and are about families that live in, let's say Hialeah in Miami or in poor neighborhoods of this US. We don't even have to go to emerging markets. That want a bigger yield on their return, right? How do you make that safe in the crypto? And then how would you, if you're a regulator, how do you actually balance that, allowing that financial inclusion while you're also putting some, regulatory efforts? It's a tough question, but I would love to hear you two say something about it.
So it's without a doubt a complicated question. Yeah. It seems to me that the regulators are going to focus on the on and off ramps, which is the folks that they're typically used to dealing with, and they'll apply some pressures on broker-dealers, banks that they already have interactions with, which will be very helpful for any DeFi project that has some affiliation with a traditional finance firm, because they have experience in answering questions, making sure that you don't expose yourself more than you need to, and that interaction is really, really important. That interaction is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. The regulators, as James described them, they're actual, real, traditional finance people. And they're going to take a good hard look at the sustainability of some of these ecosystems, which is something that we don't talk a lot about in the crypto ecosystem. It matters a lot for the regulator and for financial institutions, and we'll need to make sure that these DeFi instruments are in fact sustainable. And you see a lot of these financial instruments, there are some issues there, right, as far as the regulator is concerned. And while, especially the instruments that rely on this intrinsic value of a token for their operation, everything is okay as long as there's a bull market, everything keeps going up, we're good. Things start going down, we're okay. But when things crash, things start crashing, right? So we've never actually had a bear market with this amount of composition of DeFi projects out there, right? Because the previous bear market, we had ICO projects disappear. No big deal, right? This time, you'll see things like, synthetic assets, for example. These rely on a crypto collateral. Mm-hmm. So what happens if that crypto collateral crashes? And your stable coin suddenly turns into maybe not so stable coin. And that's a problem. It's also a problem.
Was it something I said?
Is this?
I think this is Mo.
You asked the regulator question. My lawyer pulled the plug.
Is this because I was talking about the sustainability of crypto DeFi?
I don't know. I think we have to cut it, right? I don't know.
It's probably worth.
We are going to investigate that right now, so give us just a moment. Thanks.
Okay.
We can keep going for now. Give us a... Yeah, all right.
Should we keep going? I don't know.
Oh, just keep rolling it? Okay,
Yeah, just
we'll keep
keep
rolling.
going.
Okay. All right, cool. We'll just play with it. All right, thanks, guys. You're all so brave staying in. I love it.
Please
Yeah.
let us know if you smell smoke.
Exactly. All right, so that just threw me off a little bit, but thanks for sharing that, because I do think that's really important, and you're right. We haven't seen the bear market with so much of assets under management right now, and I think that's going to be interesting. You want to finish your thought on that?
Yeah, sure. And the thing with DeFi is that it's all compositions, right? Which is great because it means that you can develop a protocol that relies on another protocol. It shortens the development time, but it also builds dependencies, right? So if you depend on one of these, synthetics, for example, they come crashing down, you're fucked, right? Your protocol comes crashing down. So the regulator is going to be interested in this. We need to make sure that the protocols that we build on are indeed sustainable and that there are safeguards in place. Going all the way back to the consensus protocol. I think a lot of kind of like the newer chains out there, like Proof of Stake Network, they have some assumptions on the value of the stake being much bigger than the value of the underlying assets. But what happens if the stake is in a crypto that comes crashing down? Now you have stable coins, reserve-backed stable coins, that are worth more than the reserve. It's difficult. It's complex, and the regulator is going to be really interested in these things.
And the interesting part, if you look average age of a crypto investor, it's like 32, 33. Never seen a bear market in any asset class. Yeah. So that's a crazy thing to watch. Just traditional markets, what happens, but the leverage is what's going to get really exciting. And I hope we don't see these projects go up in smoke, because that'll be very bad for all of us. So there needs to be some sort of sustainable letdown and deflation if possible.
So for those folks that are in the room, what kind of advice would you give in terms of investing in DeFi, and where should they start? So let's say if somebody's starting to do maybe, let's say, $1,000 to $10,000, which platform would you say you should kind of go and see some good yields, in your opinion?
That's a simple answer. My lawyer won't let me answer that question.
Come on.
Yeah, I think you got to do your research. I would say that the risk-free rate is what, 1%? Okay. If you're seeing 10%, that's probably decent. If you're seeing double, triple digit, understand what your risk is, because there's a reason why the interest rates are so high on these products.
Yeah.
Yeah, but seriously, like people say, do your own research in the crypto space, and it's really important. Like if you're just going on a project because it promises like 18% yield out of thin air, be suspicious. Like, money doesn't come out of nowhere. Do your own research. Okay,
great. I think you guys have any more closing remarks on any of this? Any further advice? I'll just
be careful on the bear market. It's going to be fun, but that bear market will produce some amazing investment opportunities if you're positioned properly. Don't use more leverage than you're comfortable with. It cuts both directions. And do your research, read about what's going on, and 15, 20% is insane on an interest rate.
Well, actually, can I just, some people would say in here that we have been in the bear market, right? So when you say bear market, are you saying the bear market is coming more?
It's coming.
Okay.
Crypto is very volatile, and we haven't seen it yet. We've seen different leverage blow-offs, but hasn't really set in yet.
Okay.
And it's a different market. Its famous last words is different, but what we saw in 2013 and 2017 was a dominant Bitcoin market, and now it's a much smaller component, and most of the investment capital is out on the risk curve. It's in DeFi, it's in Ethereum, it's in NFTs, and that is where most of the retail capital went, and it's very flighty. So downturns will create mass liquidations and a lot of fear in the market on those out on the risk curve assets.
Okay.
I think the biggest message is that, good times.
I'm sorry for interrupting. It was a false alarm before. It's probably the same again. We're apologies if you want to just keep going. We're good.
Yeah.
Sure thing. So the big thing is we're just getting started. And it might look like we're deep into it, but this is just the beginning. I'm an engineer. I'm really excited about the technologies that are emerging, new smart contracting languages, new verification tools, toolboxes to build better, safer smart contracts. We're just getting started. Like Mark Cuban said yesterday, not everyone is going to make it. And everyone should be aware of that and should be, careful and make, their decisions accordingly.
That's a huge point. Zoom out on your charts. It's not a day-by-day fight. It's a long event.
Yeah, I actually, I agree that bear market, yes, no, but there are always cycles. As I've said earlier on the panel, I'm going to stick to that. It doesn't matter what it is, you should be careful, right? But I agree with you, Tomer. I think we're just getting started. And when folks tell me, hey, am I late in crypto? I said, no, we are actually just getting started. And I think everything that has happened with ICOs and all that was just kind of like really quick kind of understanding of what might come. And even now with NFTs, I think just a lot of it is BS, but the small percentage is what's going to stay, and it's going to develop into some pretty fascinating things. So I think we are just getting started, and tools are just being built. So yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your knowledge. It's a pleasure to have had you.
Thank you.
Thank you.